All right. Sweet. So we are live now. Uh, anyway, hello, Mr. B. Glad you can make it. Welcome to the Autistic Aether podcast, where we just be silly. That's all we do.
Good morning, and I'm glad to be here. Silly's what I do best.
Absolutely, Mr. B. Now, I do this with every single new guest we have. Why don't you, even though I know who you are, why don't you explain what you do for anybody who doesn't know you?
I mostly stream on Twitch under the name B Shonen, but I also do illustrations by commission. I produce music. I have an album released, which it's a pretty niche album, so it's not like something that's to everybody's taste, but uh, and that's about it. I'm basically I just make art at random and try and build a big enough portfolio that people might take an interest in me.
Yeah. You do very good at all of it, by the way. Like, people need to see your stuff because I think you do a very good job, and I like how determined you are to like always want to learn and try to do better, and you never give up and all that. I think that's very admirable, and I think people could really learn a thing or two from seeing what you do.
I don't know about never giving up. It's more like a repeated series of giving up and then doing nothing for months at a time, and then deciding that I don't want to waste the rest of what little life I have and restarting and then starting the cycle all over again eventually.
That's pretty relatable to me, honestly. That's one of the reasons why I was so. I mean, I found out about you because of 11. I'm sure you know about him on Twitter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I I found out about you from him, and I just kind of saw a lot of myself in you. I kind of want to do a lot of the same things you do, just like make wanting to draw and make music and video games and all that stuff. So, and the fact that you actually did release an album, like you said, I thought was very cool, and I want to talk about that a bit because I really think you did a good job on the album. Because, in my opinion, what makes music go from just it's instrumentals that sound really well to something that's like truly special is if you're able to portray an emotion through your music. I think your album just hit the nail on the head with what it wanted to say. Like, I think it was one of the best like portrayals of that specific emotion I've ever heard throughout music, and I just want to compliment you on that. You did extremely well with that album, and I think you should be proud of yourself.
Thank you very much. It's surreal to hear that from somebody I have never met.
Yeah, you did very well. Is there anything you would like to add about the album that maybe you've never mentioned before?
I had to put myself in a very dark place to finish it.
Mm,
It's one of those. It's weird to me that it's the first project of any kind that has taken a significant amount of time that I finished, but didn't rely on the typical kind of motivations that I use to keep working on everything else. I did not, it was not a fun time to make some of the darker tracks on the album. And I was going through a lot of stuff mentally at the time anyway, but I wanted to finish it badly enough that I would put myself in that headspace on purpose to try and if I was in that headspace, then I recognized it as a good time to work on the music. And so even though I had worked on and off on that music for probably a year, a vast majority of it came together and was made in only about the last month and a half before it went out. In
interesting.
fact, and I will say that there's the rap track, man. I was this close to not even including that, to just having the instrumental and not even including the lyrical rap. think it's a little bit cringe, but it was my first ever vocal thing, and I was kind of proud of it for that reason rather than the actual quality of the content. So I left it in.
I was when I listened to it the first time, I was kind of shocked that you included vocals in as well, but I thought you did very well with it. Like you you know like you were able to I'm not great at explaining things, but you were able to basically not have a goofy voice while singing. Like you were able to be very on key, I think, and I thought you did well with it.
Lots of private practice every time I'm driving home in my car. I have a long commute, and I do sing a lot in the car, so I wanted to try and put it to the test. It came out okay. I could do better.
Of course, there's always room to grow, but I do think you did very well for like a first vocal track that you put out there.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Um, I'm gonna uh, I'm gonna include a lot of links to your stuff in the description. Would you like me to include a link to your Bandcamp page?
Yes, of course.
Okay, cool. And also for the episode, what would you prefer to be called? Because I know you go by B, but there's like B Shonen, Wandering B, Immortal B. Like, what would you
Uh,
be?
oh, just B is fine.
Okay, just B. Good to know. Mm. And I see you also streamed on you stream on Twitch and whatnot, and you've been making a lot of Blender assets. I'm curious, how long have you been using Blender?
It would be a lie to say that I have only just recently started. Um, I've only actually made something start to finish and consider it a concluded project within the last couple of weeks. But I had a lot of I've gone on and off with Blender over many, many years. I've done like a lot of beginner tutorials and then run out of steam and stopped doing it. So it didn't take as long as I think it would take most people just because I wasn't going in completely cold. And
Huh.
also it just helped that I was already familiar with things like what texturing and UVs were, and the animation portion of Blender is kind of the same as DaVinci. So like the animated intro for my stream used a lot of the same kind of interface, how everything looked. So I was
Mhm.
able to translate that into Blender. So,
Huh.
um, but only a couple of weeks. I'm worried because I'm soon gonna start. Probably after these two projects I'm working on are done, I'm gonna attempt my first like soft model,
Hmm.
and
Have
I know that
you
that tends to be a lot harder than doing like rigid stuff.
hmm, have you I remember you put out a tweet saying you don't watch too many tutorials. So I'm assuming you haven't watched like the infamous the Blender donut tutorial.
I'm aware of the donut tutorial, but mostly because it's everywhere, and it's funny because a lot of videos a lot of videos actually made reference to that.
Yeah.
I did watch tutorials. It wasn't like I didn't. I tried to. I like I said, I was already kind of familiar with the interface and the basic process of it, so I could skip ahead as much as possible. And then most, if I needed a video, it was like go to YouTube, find one that's like 3 minutes long, because those are probably going to be the ones where they're going over either a lot of stuff very quickly, or they're only talking about a couple of things that make certain things easier. And I would just reference those because I don't have the patience to sit down and watch like a 45 minute. I only did one. I did one tutorial that was really long. It was about
Hmm.
35 minutes, and it was just talking about the modeling tools, like what each modeling tool actually did.
Um, there's a channel I might link you if you're interested. He kind of does he does a variety of like software tutorials, and the gimmick is that they're supposed to be very rapid fire fast, like literally less than 5 minutes, less than 3 minutes. Um, he covers Blender, covers Unity, covers Unreal Engine, all that stuff. And he does kind of shill AI, which personally not a fan of, but he still makes really good, quick tutorials. And I think you might benefit from watching those because he really does just get to the point. Doesn't like waste your time.
Yeah,
Um,
you can hit me
yeah,
with a link with that for sure.
yeah, yeah. I'll definitely link you that later because But when I said I relate to you very heavily, I also kind of use Blender a lot. I remember specifically when I started, which was in 2021, and I was kind of stubborn at first. I was just kind of messing around with the tools, didn't really learn anything. Made a terrible first attempt at a robot. But then I did start to be like, okay, you gotta like swallow your pride and be patient and learn stuff. And I made a better robot, and then a better robot after that. And then I haven't unveiled this one yet, but I think it's the best robot I ever made so far. And I did complete the donut tutorial because and I learned a lot from watching it, but there are some things I genuinely don't think I'm ever gonna get. Do you know what geometry nodes are?
No, I don't think I've heard that term yet.
Okay. It's it's a it's like a tool in Blender, right? It's kind of how you can add like procedural gener eh, procedurally generate stuff for your model.
Hmm.
For like a skyscraper, for example, you don't need to individually create every single window. You can basically create like one story and kind of have it repeat randomly throughout the whole building. Like have windows on different sections and whatnot without having to manually do it. And
Hmm.
it's so confusing to understand. It's like it's almost like coding. I feel like, and I don't think I'm ever gonna get it. And if you decide to tackle it one day, you're definitely gonna be in for a surprise. I feel because man,
I'm the same way with programming or procedural generation stuff. That's pretty much 90% of the reason I've never gotten even 10% of the way to some kind of finished video game.
it's it's
I, it,
difficult.
it's like I like the process, the problem solving process, and the logical creation of coding, but like the process is so long and so arduous. And I know a lot of people are just like, "Oh, you just copy paste code. It's not that hard." It's like, but you can't do that and become a good programmer. So I don't want to take a bunch of shortcuts and then get a product out and it be just absolute ass. And also, if I do stuff like that, I'm not going to be able to bug fix it effectively because I didn't write it.
You're
So
gonna you're gonna be the B version of Yandere Dev, where the
yeah,
code's just a mess.
just a complete travesty, unreadable to everyone but me, writer of the arcane code.
Yes. You'll get a deal with a video game software company on your hit game, and they'll be like, "What on earth is this monstrosity?" And then you'll quit working with them because they just don't understand your genius, and your game will never be finished, and you will drink cum or whatever happens.
I'll become a log cow. I'll get a Turkey Tom documentary made about me.
Sir, yes, sir. That's the cycle, baby. That's how we do it down here in these parts. Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
hate programming so much that I actually right now um, I'm going to stick to learning modeling for now, but I do want to make a game eventually, since
Yeah.
3D modeling feels possible now that I've actually attempted it. And I'll be using the Godot engine because its code base is, or its code style is basically Python, which is it's about as easy as it gets.
Hmm. That's a
And
good.
yeah, it's just like a modified Python language. So if you're going to learn, it's proprietary. Like you're not going to be able to take it anywhere else and use it with anything else. But it is also probably the easiest language to learn that I know of. So good enough for me.
Yeah. I think that's a good game engine to learn. I was I kind of flip flop between engines in the span of 4 years. I was going to use Unity originally, but then I kind of moved on to Unreal because I thought that might kind of help with my dream project. But now I'm moving from Unreal and trying to learn CryEngine. Not sure if you knew this, but CryEngine is actually a free engine for like us plebs to use.
Yeah.
I only recently discovered that. I didn't know that. Um, I I don't remember why I initially stopped using Unity. Maybe it just wasn't. Oh, I think I know why. I think it's because Unreal Engine, you don't necessarily need to know programming. There's something in it called blueprints.
Yeah, blueprints.
Yeah. I think I might have switched off from Unity for that, and that might have been a good idea because, from what I understand, I don't know the full story. Maybe you can fill me in, but Unity kind of seems to screw over its creatives or something.
So for about a year, they were trying to do a pay model with the game that basically charged the developers some of their. It was like they were getting charged like a fixed small price for each time the game was launched by
Oh,
any user, which I don't know how that would even be trackable in the first place. I don't think it was ever actually implemented because they probably didn't figure out how to even read that information.
yeah.
But it pretty much killed all interest in Unity as a game engine. Um, Unity as an engine was getting too complex anyway, in my opinion. It was always kind of this indie engine that was supposed to be easy to learn, but the more features they added, the more obscure things were getting. And then after about a year of doing that and failing and destroying their own company, they reversed it, I think probably 3 or 4 months ago. They finally just canceled that entire concept. I was just like, oh, I mean, too late now. There were
Yeah.
some games like Silksong literally stopped development to transfer to another game engine, so it's kind of too late for that.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty awful tactic. I what is it with like companies and making terrible decisions? Like it needs to be studied, I think.
Well, I mean, it's as much as I dislike the modern iteration of Jim Sterling, I think he said it best way long ago when he was still actually making decent videos. These corpos don't want some of the money. They want literally all of the money, all of it.
Hmm.
And if they can find a way to convince you to let them come into your house and dig in your couch cushions for 5 cents, they'll do it.
Yeah, you
And
might have
I
been on.
think that's the primary guide for a lot of these decisions is that it's totally disconnected from the creators. It's disconnected from even the executives of most game development teams. It's definitely not considering the end user that's actually playing the games at all. That's for sure.
Yeah, man. Speaking of companies making terrible decisions, a game series I really like one of my top three favorite series, hold it near and dear to my heart. Maybe getting ruined because they decide to change things that really shouldn't have been changed. Could you relate to that? Like, is there a series you used to like that just got horribly butchered because they just sold out or whatever?
I could do multiple podcast episodes on Halo. Like
Even.
just Halo would be enough for me to just talk forever about that. But I mean, there's quite a few series that I've been unfortunate enough to. You ever seen that overused Red Letter Media meme when it's like, "Hey, what's it like watching your favorite franchise,
Yeah.
growing up to watch your favorite franchises die?" And the other guy's like, "It's great."
Yep.
Like that's I've seen lots of series just. I don't know about. Well, I guess I don't know about selling out necessarily.
Mm,
Most of the time, it's just like internally the dev team just becomes misguided or just isn't guided at all, and the product just goes to shit over multiple iterations of games.
yeah. Or or they try to implement they try to copy other games basically like
Yeah.
kind of what Call of Duty for example is it wants to be Fortnite so bad.
Oh my god. Every time I see another like execution animation compilation that somehow shows up every once in a while on TikTok or YouTube Shorts or whatever because they're like, well, you like video game content? What's this like? And it's just like you see like Cardi B knifing a guy in the back, and I'm like, what are we doing here? Like COD, I wouldn't say COD was always like a serious game, but I just these crossovers, man. I just get so sick of seeing them. Some games, it's fine. Like Fortnite, it's fine. Fortnite was already like a generic everyman's product anyway. Magic the Gathering, it's fine. Nobody give a shit about the original Magic the Gathering lore. So do I care that they're implementing all these crazy ass crossover decks and stuff like that into the game? Not really. In fact, if anything, it's actually driven interest back into the game, and has helped attract probably new customers that heard about various crossover events. So there are certain franchises I think are okay with that, but COD was always a military thing first. It was always a spec ops thing first. So it just feels really weird to me to see all kinds of crossover shit appearing in that game, especially when you don't need it. Everybody buys all the, they buy COD every year anyway. Like, what do you need all this extra crap for? Is anybody
Uh,
really gonna? I want to know if they actually had an increase in sales of battle passes or anything like that from having these bizarre additions to it.
I would assume. Otherwise, they would stop doing it, right?
Yeah, I guess. And maybe it's like everything else where it's like they don't need 98% of the players to like it and buy it. They just need the 2% of players that will buy it every single time without fail.
Um, you're probably familiar with the channel Crowcat, right?
I feel like I should have like a cigar in my mouth and just be like, my God, I haven't heard that name in a long time. Because that's literally, because like Crocat.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I have watched that channel before, but it's been a long time.
He made a his most recent video was talking about like what Call of Duty is now versus what it was then.
Hmm.
Um, I do think you're like pretty spot on that it wasn't like always super duper 1000% serious. It did kind of have a sort of like dude bro sort of, there was the Mountain Dew Doritos memes going on back then. It was
Hmm.
like a competitor with Halo back then, which is kind of crazy to think about because of how Halo is treated now versus how it was back then. It was like big enough to compete with Call of Duty. Um, anyway, the stories in older CODs, even if they were very like almost Hollywood actiony, it still felt very like respectful about like war and history and all that. Like it didn't really treat it like a joke, like I think
Hmm.
modern COD does.
Ah, yes, that's why I know that name. The Remember Halo video and also the Cyberpunk video. I watched both of those.
Yeah,
I was about to say, like, I know I heard that,
great
but it had been
channel,
been
great
a long
channel.
time. Really high quality content. It's just that he forgets his password frequently. It disappears for like half a year at a time.
To be fair, he doesn't really, even though there's a lot of material for him to cover in modern games. I wouldn't be surprised if he was only covering games that he specifically was very knowledgeable and passionate about.
Well, and there's no reason to cover every instance of yet another franchise taking a shit and becoming literally worthless.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times can like it'll just drive you insane to think about it. That's why I'm not even in the AAA space pretty much at all anymore. I thought about making scripted videos for a long time, and I just every time I would start a script, I would get to the point where I'm like, man, this video has been made before. Like I've seen other people make this exact script before. There's no point in making this.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm pretty much all in on indie games for the most part, just because it's like the only space left that isn't completely tainted by this cancer that's in game development nowadays.
Yeah. Indie games and I think double A games are also pretty good. I haven't really come across. You know what double A games are, right?
Yeah, you got like the it's kind of like, well, it's like the previous AAA
Yeah.
pretty much, because I mean like Halo was only made with a relatively small studio of like less than 100 guys.
Yeah.
I
It,
normally call that like it's like the 15 to 80 people range in my opinion for manpower.
old Valve was like that, and that kind of baffles me. Like how such a small group of people could just change so much with like PC gaming and whatnot. But then
Well,
again, that's what id Software was back in the day when they made Doom and Quake.
yeah, I mean, emerging technology gave them the space, and they had geniuses employed that could exploit it. So
Yeah. I shoot, what was I gonna say? I'm sorry. I got no sleep, so I'm like bleeding from my eyes, but it's okay. That's content. Or
brother, me too. I took a nap for an hour before getting up and slamming a shower real quick, and then going, and then I got in my car and sped all the way to the gas station to grab a Monster.
that that's the life right there, my friend. Yes,
That's
sir.
a man's breakfast.
Yes, sir. Oh man. Um. Well, I suppose I could hear you. We could talk about Halo for a bit if you want, since that's both a series we both like and seem to be in agreement of where it's at currently is not very good. Um, what is the people always talk about the art style of Halo, and
Hmm.
when they say bad art style, they always refer to the 343 games, and it makes sense and whatnot. But I want to add a bit of challenge to that question. Which of the Bungie games has the worst art style, in your opinion?
I think if I were going to answer that, I would have to qualify what exactly an art style is first, because a
Oh,
lot of the games, I think the word, okay, I'm going to say probably Halo 2 has the worst art style,
I agree.
because you had a lot of, it's like they had just discovered things like specular effects, so every damn surface has to have this weird reflective quality to it. The game is probably the most rushed of all of them, and so a lot of the environments look pretty, like, they look adequate, they're acceptable, but they're pretty bland for the most part compared to either 1 or 3, or even Reach. And I would say probably Reach is a close second.
Oh, you don't like Reach's art style?
I like Reach's art style. I just think in terms of just qualitatively, if I'm comparing it to the kind of atmosphere that the first and third games hit, Reach just didn't get there. It was very drab looking. They didn't rely on lighting very much, even though the 360 was more capable than previous consoles of doing that, and Halo 3 used that to great effect. Halo Reach felt very washed out. It had that brown military shooter look to everything that they were trying to go for. It was supposed to be, quote, darker than previous Halos, but I think that just made it look kind of weak by comparison.
As
I think Halo 3 was probably the absolute. That was probably the peak of actual artistry, competent, intentionally designed, good-looking environments, good-looking shaders for things like water. Um, the brightness and vibrance of things without getting cartoony. I think they did a really good job in that one.
that, yeah. Um, as okay, sorry. I gotta shake off the sleepiness. All right. Okay. Um, I I think I like Reach's art style more. I don't know why. I just always thought it looked the most um I guess visually refined in my opinion. Like 3 looks beautiful, right? But there are some points where it sometimes didn't age well in my opinion. Like what was the character's name? The colonel guy, the with the white uniform.
Oh, Admiral Hood.
Yeah. I thought his face looked a little weird in Halo 3, not gonna lie.
Yeah. Yeah, that was always, even back then. That was one of my things. I mean, I was a freshman in high school when that game came out, and even back then, before I had ever gotten into really criticizing or analyzing games of any kind, I was still like, he looks kind of messed up.
Yeah. Yeah, I just think Reach is like just has like the most polished art style, and I think that's kind of why I
Yeah,
like it the most.
actually, yeah, I could see that. In fact, I would say that especially in things like facial animations and just the look of the characters and everything, they really stepped it up considerably from Halo 3 for Reach.
Yeah. I asked my previous guest this, but I'll probably ask every guest this because we're gonna have a lot of video game loving people on here. What's your video game hot takes?
Just general hot takes.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh I guess I guess, and I went over this I was actually talking about this on stream yesterday. It's more related to the industry than specific games or genres because a lot of when it comes to enjoying something, it's almost always going to be entirely subjective. Like I fucking hate Fortnite, especially build mode, but there's literally millions of people who enjoy it and play it all the time. So
Hmm.
I would say that the biggest hot take I have is I don't care that Ubisoft is going under and all these people are about to lose their jobs. I don't care that EA deserves to follow the same path. I would not care if they were going over under right now and it's another situation where 10,000 plus people are about to be out of a job. I don't care about that. There's lots of developers in these spaces that want to talk about well, I mean, but I got a family to feed, and it's messed up that you guys are all cheering for this company going down. It's like I don't care. Make good products. How about that? I mean, work for a company that isn't shit. I know it's difficult to start a new studio, but it's got to be better than what you're currently doing, working on whatever fucking internment camp, uh, precious metal mind type game development you're working on right now.
Mm.
Um, I think that the developers are in the unfortunate situation of having spent their lives working on something and gaining these skills just so that they can basically be exploited, but at the same time. And I don't even think it's funny that they even use that kind of defense because it's not even that they like the company that they work for. They're literally just like, please, my family. They don't care about EA or Ubisoft even when they're working for them. They know that they're shit.
Yeah.
So I think my hottest take would definitely be like, no, you're losing your job working for Ubisoft. Good. You know why? Because it means that Ubisoft is finally going away. And if
Oh well.
10,000 people got to lose their jobs and shit has to be hard for a bunch of people for that to happen, that's fine. Because I'm tired of seeing them butcher all of their long-standing franchises, try and turn them into money printers. They did it to Ghost Recon. They're doing it to Far Cry. They have too many games in development hell. All of their old series have been basically forgotten. Assassin's Creed it's just a shit show. I
Well,
mean, any company that's in this position does not deserve to continue existing.
I agree with you, but are you saying you're not excited for the magnum opus Assassin's Creed Shadows?
uh, I'm gonna reserve any and all opinions that have to do with that game.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I'm
Now,
not. I will say they left behind the. I will say it highlights very clearly, almost too perfectly, the problem with modern development because they used to have all the Assassin's Creed games had that kind of alien tech, Illuminati type angle to everything. It's not like that was a new concept or anything. So when they did these crazy fucking things in some of the games, like I was never that bothered by it. That part of the story was always there. But there was such care taken to be as historically authentic as possible because it was part of the artistry of the game to be that authentic. And to see what the modern games have turned into, it's just truly embarrassing.
yeah. Even even the country that is starring in the game, Japan. A lot of people, were kind of looking forward to seeing like a Japanese Assassin's Creed, and they seem very disappointed with how it's
We
turning
we
out.
finally get Assassin's Creed with ninjas, and it's the dumbest shit I've ever seen in my life. Unbelievable. Like
Yeah.
you might as well just go play Ghost of Tsushima again. It's gonna be better. I'm looking
You,
I'm looking forward to the next Ghost game just because it'll be what Assassin's Creed can't be.
I was literally about to ask you, what do you think about Ghost of Yotei? I don't know if I'm saying that right.
I haven't looked into it at all, so I don't know what the next story is going to be or if they're due. Like I know nothing about it. I just know that the sequel was announced, so I don't have any particular opinion. But the first game was so damn fun, with such a compelling story and such visceral combat, and a nice combination of stealth and action elements that I'm definitely that like I've got my eye on it for sure.
Yeah. I have yet to play it because I'm a pleb, but I will get to it. Actually, I've been playing a lot of PS2 games, not gonna lie. Because I'm with you. I'm like, the industry sucks. I don't want to support it. It sucks that people have to lose their jobs, but you know, kind of is what it is. It's kind of like the only way things are gonna heal. It's like a full restart button. So I've just been kind of spending my time playing series I've never tried before because I did have a PS2 growing up, but I never played a lot of the classics it's known for, like Twisted Metal, Silent
Hmm.
Hill, all that good stuff, because they were rated M, and my parents did the sinful decision of not having their child play M-rated games. What monsters? No, I'm kidding. Um, so yeah, I've just been having fun, just like exploring the past for the first time, and some people will call me crazy, like, "Oh, why do you actually like buy physical discs and play the game and on like an old TV and whatnot? Don't you want to play like an emulation where everything's better, yada yada?" Um, Not really. Maybe this is a controversial opinion, but I kind of just want to experience the games like as they were back then because I missed out on that era, and I want to see what it was like, just as it is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I was actually when I was still living with my ex a few years ago, back in like 2020-ish, 2020, 2021. We were actually building a collection of physical games, and we got quite a few rare ones too. And it was really cool to actually go and play in the same way. Like we were playing, it's. I knew of this show growing up, but I never really played the games, even though I'm pretty sure I remember them. And it was Monster Rancher,
Hmm.
and Monster Rancher 3 and 4 are actually legit incredible games that desperately, desperately need to be brought back. Like they need to like it's so it's such an interesting turn-based combat system with the whole like monster raising concept, the exploring the attachments that you gain to monsters as well as their deaths because they can in fact just die of old age and stuff like that. And it those games are super interesting, and it was I think it was most striking because you just don't see that out of not out of the AAA space, and I mean even in a lot of the indie spaces, you just there's I think what it is like there's a back then having physical discs first. It's not like you can push bug fixes, so they need to be as cleanly built as possible, and you're still going to have some on the game when it ships. The cost of getting games out there was much higher because, or at least we had to worry about disc production and shipping, and so those had to be factored into the costs. Like the margin of error was so small that they had to do right the first time. And in order to do correctly, it wasn't just a matter of making sure the game was correctly developed. It was making sure that whatever vision they had was clearly communicated in early stages of development, and they actually built a game from the ground up with all their documentation in line, um, trying to minimize the amount of time that was spent on it while maximizing the realization of the vision. Because the only way they were going to make money is if people could actually notice how good the game was. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm kind of rambling a little bit
I
here.
don't know. I get what you're saying.
Like, I mean, hey, like, actually, the best example of that would be like Starfield, where the lead director actually straight up came out and said that they don't use documentation at all, and they just let the departments make whatever they want to make, which is, I can't get over how I would never be able to communicate how insane that sounds to me. Like, you are in charge of hundreds of people all working to make a coherent product because the stakes are high. You employ these people, they need to continue having a job. So maybe at the very least to make sure that the game that's being produced, like Starfield, is actually understood by all of the developers on the team, what exactly is being done and where. Like, it's just like that kind of, the stakes felt like, I think back in the old days, it was easier for a company to go under, especially because the video game industry had blown up into this absolute bloated behemoth that it is.
Yeah.
And things like digital game distribution just hadn't taken off at the time. So you had to do it right.
Yeah.
Those that didn't do it right went under, and they went under quick.
Wait, when you were talking about like how when you back in the day, you couldn't update your game. Like whatever you put out there was like that was just how it was, right?
Mm-hmm.
Reminds me of kind of reminds me of like how Devil May Cry 2 kind of ended up compared to the rest of the series. Are you familiar with Devil May Cry?
I played them on and off, but I'd say the only one that I ever played and beat was the reboot for Xbox 360 DMC or whatever it was called.
Devil May Cry DMC Devil May Cry was its title. I'm even kidding.
That's
I don't know.
And even back then, dude, you want to talk about like the most on the nose cringe storytelling imaginable, man. It was gameplay wise, I found it to be very fun, but it's pretty hard to be cringe to a teenager.
Yeah. I have friends who like the game. I think they do like the writing, but they might be ironic with that. Like, oh yeah, no, this is a masterpiece. Blah, blah, blah. But going to the PS2 titles, Devil May Cry 2, it came out after Devil May Cry 1, of course. I don't remember what year. It might have been a year later or something, because if I remember correctly, DMC 1 to 3 was like 2001 to 2005.
Mm-hmm.
So they were pumping games out pretty quickly. And DMC2 was just a disaster. Like, we were talking.
Yeah,
about,
I know it's the black sheep of the series. That's for sure.
Oh, like, I know a lot of people say like, "Oh, this game is so bad. There's like nothing redeemable about it." But that's genuinely how I feel about DMC2. It is so bad. I tried to play it. I really, really did. I think I got past chapter 5 before I was like, I'm done. I'm not wasting any more of my time on this filth. I'm out. And they couldn't fix it. Like that game.
Yeah, there's no overhaul that you're not gonna try and pull a freaking No Man's Sky where you just iteratively improve the game over the next freaking decade. Like, it's done. If it's doomed at launch, it's doomed at launch.
Yeah, but what's funny is the series, as you know, didn't die because they decided to redeem themselves by making an entirely new sequel and make it even more bold than the first one. And and it was like so successful and like well made and whatnot. That's kind of the third game directed where the series went in the future. And so I guess that was the strategy back then. If you release a really bad game, just make like the most amazing sequel ever to like counter it.
Well, I think development overhead was also not as high back then.
Yeah.
You didn't have as many personnel most of the time. And the thing is like back then, development times of 1 to 2 years was pretty much the standard. Like the scope of the games was typically smaller, mostly due to just technical limitations. So it's like you couldn't spend 5 years working on a game because it just simply didn't take that long to make them when you had to work within the bounds of hardware at the time.
Yeah. Do you think okay, this might sound silly. I don't know everything that goes on at AAA companies because obviously I don't work at one. Do you think graphics might be partially to blame why there's like so many employees now than when there than how it was back then? Because you gotta like add more detail and whatnot to the game, and that might take more people to make all that stuff within the game's development window. We'll say like 4 or 3 years or something. Because I think if you had the smaller teams back then and they had to like make like a very detailed games that we get now, it might take like longer than how they were releasing games back then. Does that
It's
make
hard to
sense?
it's hard to say in that, like, if we took those teams from back then, they were also generally a lot better organized and communication was a lot tighter. So it's hard to say, but I will say that a lot of teams today are bloated as hell.
Yeah.
And nowadays you don't even need like, because what makes a game look good for the most part is going to be light and shadow. You don't even really need like powerful models or anything. But yeah, if you look at the credits of a lot of modern AAA games, they have these gigantic art teams
Yeah.
where three quarters or more of them are just contractors they brought on to do like a certain amount of models or whatever.
Yeah.
And
I
like it's just crazy the ridiculous cost of making these the current lineup of AAA games is just it's mind blowing to me. And every single one of them, and I think that's part of that might be part of the reason why you see so many games trying to do the whole games as service thing where they're like, oh man, we really need a $1 billion Destiny 1 clone type situation because God help us if we do not find one by the end of the year.
yeah. I remember when I beat Doom 2016, I was kind of like I had the credits playing because I didn't know if because that game kind of ended on a cliffhanger. I wanted to see if there was like any extra details on a sequel um at the end of the credits, which in hindsight was kind of silly. Like this was a reboot of a legendary franchise. They probably didn't know how well it was gonna do and how it would be received, so they probably didn't have sequel plans yet. Um, but I remember, I swear, the credits went on for like double-digit minutes. It was like such a long time. Like that's
Well,
something I'll never forget.
part of that is just because a lot of times you'll see that because they contract other companies to accomplish certain things like sound effects, marketing. Obviously, a lot of these studios don't even use their own people for this kind of thing. I think the most notorious one right now in terms of contractor use is probably any given Microsoft studio, but 343, well, now Halo Studios specifically. They have some of the most aggressive contractor rotations I've literally ever seen anywhere, and I can't even believe that they got a functional Halo 5 or Halo Infinite out. And I use the word functional loosely.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's very generous of you. What What's funny is I don't think man, I just kind of look back at this 2021 me with such cringe because I remember when I played Halo Infinite for the first time, I was like, oh man, this is the best Halo since Reach, blah blah blah. But then when I played more and more, like the cracks started to show. I was like, okay, this is really not as good as I thought it was. And it's like, and I never look back. I hear the game is better now, but I'm just like, it was such a disappointment, kind of like the final straw for me. I'm just like, I don't even want to bother.
Well, it's one of those like I always thought the initial sandbox had its problems, but it was like in terms of just how the weapons felt, if you had a powerful enough PC, how it looked when everything was in motion, because it did have a lot of performance problems on launch.
Yeah.
Generally, the sandbox experience, the various grenades, the power ups, that kind of thing, I think it is actually, especially now, but even at the time, I think it was pretty much the best multiplayer sandbox if you exclude certain things.
Yeah.
Uh, all of the electric weapons, they need to go. they're a travesty. That is easily the biggest fumble in that entire game. by a long mile is being able to basically shut down vehicles with a near hit scan weapon from a distance, from a long distance. That was a massive fumble. They should have absolutely never did that because it makes vehicle play complete cancer. It makes vehicle play so bad that they have to spam vehicles into big team. Because there's a ton of vehicles that you can use in big team now. There's so many that it's almost hard to use the electric weapons to actually stun vehicles because there's so many driving around. But as far as like pulling the game together, I mean, that's mostly just the multiplayer and Forge teams somehow scraping together what remained of the sandbox and making something competent out of it, implementing things like Firefight, which I will say, by the way, best iteration of Firefight that's ever existed.
Mm.
I mean, I every time I come back to Halo Infinite, I start playing Firefight. It's like all I play for a week straight. So I gotta give him props for, polishing some form of this turd into a diamond, but it's still just overall been a complete travesty from the word go.
I'm fine with Halo continuing after the Bungie era. I do think there was more of the universe they could have explored, just not the way 343 was doing it. And there's another series that Microsoft owns that feels like, no, they should not have been. Like, I am not okay with them continuing. And that's Gears of War. Like, I don't even know what to say.
Could have stopped after 3.
Yes.
Should have stopped at 3. In fact, Gears of War Origins, which I'm pretty sure came out after 3. Or was it Origins? No, what the hell was that game called?
I think it was
Origins?
Judgment?
Judgment, that's it. So Gears of War Judgment comes out, and me and my friend are hyped for that shit. So we go there, and we were getting 2 games because there was a Walking Dead game that was coming out. And I don't remember why we were even hyped for that, honestly, in retrospect. Neither of us. Oh, I know. It's because we were playing the Telltale games at the time.
Okay, I was gonna ask, was it the Telltale Walking Dead?
It wasn't the Telltale Walking Dead, but it was a Walking Dead game. It was a more survival oriented game. So we were going there to pick that up and also get Gears Judgment. And I'm pretty sure I remember us taking it back the next day. Judgment. The other game, the Walking Dead game, was very mediocre, but even I'm pretty sure I kept it. I don't remember. But Judgment I ended up taking back. That was dumb, and it was a sign of things to come because 4 and 5 were terrible.
Yeah. I saw a post on Halo Infinite's Steam community, kind of comparing 343's trilogy to the Star Wars sequel trilogy, which, personally, this is probably a hot take I don't necessarily agree with, because if you know the Star Wars sequel trilogy by Disney, they were pretty much a rehash of the original, story, but worse. But 343...
substantially worse. Substantially worse.
Substantially worse, yeah. But 343 didn't really copy the story of, like, Bungie's trilogy. They did try different stuff. I just don't think they did it very well.
Honestly, their biggest mistake started with Halo 4. I think Halo 4 would actually be a lot more fondly remembered if Chief just dies at the end of that one.
Ooh,
they built up to it anyway, and he's literally holding a Havoc nuke in his hands, and it goes off 2 inches from his face, and he somehow survives that. That was outrageous. I think the game would be fondly remembered for that because their whole thing was wanting to separate themselves from Bungie anyway. Like, we want to do our own thing. It's going to be our Halo from now on. And Halo 5 was definitely a radical departure in terms of how the game felt and everything. So they obviously wanted to do that. I think the best thing they could have done was for Chief and Cortana to die at the same time, and for them to still have their final conversation, but have it be in one of those things where it's like in the flash that is happening as the nuke in his hands is going off, in that instant, the last sane fragment of Cortana talking to the Chief, and them just going out together at the same time, I think would have been a dramatically better ending than just somehow the Chief lives. That was crazy to me. I was like, bro, what? There's nothing in the universe of Halo that I know of that would stop Chief from dying to a nuke at point blank range. Like, sorry. Just that was like a gaping plot hole, and absolutely nobody really explained it ever. And I don't buy the whole, Cortana bent the light bridge around Chief and used hard light to stop it. I was like, get out of here. No way.
Uh, Another problem with 343's Halo trilogy is they couldn't make up their minds with what they wanted to do with the story. Like Halo 4, Cortana was dying. Just kidding. In Halo 5, she's alive and she's evil. Oh, just kidding. The evil one's dead. You get like a weird replacement one. And it was also like for 4 and 5. Oh, there's like a small legion of Covenant that are still evil and whatnot. Ah, just kidding. There are these like weird space pirate like former Covenant that broke off and now they have their own faction and whatnot. It's like
Well,
make
the
up your
Banished
mind.
made sense.
Yeah,
Well, they brought the Banished in just because it was like from Halo Wars, and the problem was you'd have to have played those because they didn't really explain that shit at all in Halo Infinite or anything else. Halo Infinite didn't have a plot.
it didn't.
Like it's just that there's no story that's really explored at all. So,
Yeah.
but like um shit, I lost my train of thought. Hang on, give me a sec.
Okay.
I'm like the common criticisms, especially with the whole like, well, Cortana's evil in 5. It's like, well, yeah, she's going rampant. That's the whole reason why the AI die after 7 years. Not die, but they are killed. They are literally they are decommissioned after 7 years because they will go rampant. So the idea of Cortana just going insane and deciding like, you know what, I'm going to stop all these wars. Just I'm going to go ahead and vaporize your entire fleet. How about that? Like, I'm just going to shut your fleet down and take over planet Earth, which she literally does at the end of 5. So like, I'm not. And the thing is that it's always hinted about all in Halo lore that something like that is not impossible. So I was never necessarily I was never that worried about the whole Cortana going evil thing because that's just something that can happen. And Master Chief having to come to terms with the fact that the Cortana he knew is no more is fine. But in my opinion, it was more of the Forerunner plot than anything. And the thing is that the Covenant, again, they go over this briefly in 5, I think. But it's like, yeah, there was the schism where the elites and a bunch of the other races that wanted to follow the elites. It was mostly elites, but some of the rest of the Covenant broke off with them. It's like the Covenant still exists and they're still active.
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily buy the fact that they just happened to that it's like of all the places for Chief to end up, just ending up like right outside of a massive Forerunner shield world was like insane to me. I was like, how the fuck did he get here? And how did Cortana like not notice that they were there? Like none of that made any sense to me. So but I kind of get it. They just had this story in mind and they wanted to tell it, and they had the pieces, but it's just like, let's not pretend that 343 Industries was well organized and that they were always like on par and connected on what kind of vision they wanted to bring.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it would be massively confusing, I think, as a developer to publicly state repeatedly, we're not Bungie. We're going to do a Halo our way. And for the game to come out and for the entire Halo fan base to lose their shit collectively every single time a 343 game comes out. Because it's not like previous Halos. It's not like the old games. So it's automatically shit. Like I think there's I think they were fighting the old. It would be like if Half-Life 3 came out. Like Half-Life 3 would probably not resemble in a lot of ways the games of old, and I think a lot of people would be would not appreciate that. It would probably use some modern things, like probably would have sprinting, maybe it would have ADS or some other kind of just they add new mechanics in that the previous games didn't need or support, and now everybody hates it, and it just has a huge PR nightmare. I'm not saying that that's the case here in Halo's case, because like, yeah, people did that because they didn't like the change, but and to be fair, they were doing that with Bungie too. Everybody forgets how like everybody shit their pants when Reach came out and they found out there were loadouts in multiplayer and reticle bloom. Like we tend to forget like how controversial Reach was on launch, which is just goofy to think about now, considering everything that's happened since then.
only we knew how good we had it.
The number of times I have said that, like, oh my god, like we had no idea how bad it was gonna get.
No, sir. Man, what was I gonna say? I was gonna say something. Right, right. You were talking about how a series can implement sort of, I guess, modern or trendy features, and people will complain about it. That's kind of why I brought the question of what was a series you liked that got ruined. Because I'm very certain a series that I really like is about to be ruined, as I mentioned, and it's because they're adding a lot of very trendy stuff to it that I do not like.
What
It's.
game?
Are you familiar with the Killing Floor series?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, not sure if you knew this. There's a third one that's about to release in like a month,
yeah, I
and
was aware of it. I didn't play the first one, but I did play the second one on console a decent bit.
yeah, the third one is is coming in a month, like I said, and well, all you need to know is they are implementing sliding, kind of like battle royale sliding, where you could just go voo voo all over the place.
Hmm.
Um, there's sort of colored weapon uh rarity now. You know,
Oh god, no.
purple, green, blue. That
Oh,
there's attachment system now, and that is also has a rarity thing. And also the characters are tied to the classes, so it's also a hero shooter.
oh my god. Yeah, let's just ignore the fact that Back for Blood happened and we got to see what happens when you implement those stupid rarity systems into games it just really wasn't designed for. Let's just ignore that. We can do it better. It's like, oh my, why? Oh my god. That's so dumb.
Do you know what happened with Payday 3? Because a lot of people are making Payday 3 comparisons, and I don't know enough to like be like, yeah, that's a fair comparison or not.
Payday 3 was basically a technical and content disaster.
Mm,
I'm not necessarily I think probably the technical side was way more significant overall. The game was unplayable on launch. Lots of people bought it and were not able to play it. And it wasn't just the servers were slammed so nobody could get on. It's like no, even the people that were connected couldn't stay connected, and lots of people were suffering from crashes. The frame rates were terrible. So like the game was a technical disaster at launch. Uh, I'm not I'm always a little more sympathetic when sequels come out and people are complaining that it doesn't have as much content as a game that had like 5 to 6 years of free content drops.
yeah,
Payday 3 was always going to have fewer maps than Payday 2 because Payday 2 had a whole bunch of post-launch support. But if you look at the launches between both games, Payday 3 was launching with even less stuff than the
yeah.
original Payday 2 launch with. So it's like, yeah, there was less content than the original game. Nobody could play it. I think it was unplayable for like a month. I think they finally got it working, and then it didn't matter because only about 200 people on Steam were still playing it. So
Rip.
I think Killing Floor, if they're sticking to I think Killing Floor will probably have a better time because they don't really have a. Payday 2 didn't have a clean launch either. It just didn't have a launch that bad. And I think Killing Floor 2 had a clean enough launch to at least give the impression that they know what they're doing enough. That Killing Floor 3 will probably be technically fine, at least playable. But like these extra features, sliding, I'm kind of like, whatever. Um, Everybody wants to do the quote, and I hate this term so much, the whole movement shooter.
Yeah.
Like everybody wants to fucking copy Titanfall or now Apex, I guess.
It's
So even though it's like like I said, that game had a coherent vision and specific things it was trying to do. It wasn't like trying to be like anything else.
yeah.
They just had an idea of what they wanted it to be and made it that way.
I think I think the game is specifically trying to copy Apex because well, it has similar movement. There's also zip lines and whatnot, which I mean, I'm some people were like, "Oh, in old Killing Floor, like you had to position yourself, and if you got overwhelmed, like that's it, you're screwed." Um, I don't mind the zip line because there is a cooldown on it, and it's only on a specific part on the map. So you would have to like strategically be at that part and use it at the right moment. You, you know, if you're far away from it, you could still get screwed over. And
Yeah.
I do think KF3 will be more successful than Payday 3 because there was a beta and it was not horribly glitchy. Um, so technically, I think on the technical side, it'll be fine. And the game does seem fun enough, but I just hate that it's choosing innovation through chasing trends and not like doing its own thing. Like
And
that's
just and I don't even mind it like if you're gonna trend chase, at least pick things that are like appropriate for the game.
yeah.
I mean, that's what Back for Blood tried to do because they implemented all the fucking weapon rarities, and I'm like, why would you do that in a game? I never understood the mentality required to do that because I get that it's like the battle royale thing basically, but like why in a game, why in like a wave shooter like that? Why would you want the possibility? So there's two things that have to happen from a design perspective. Either you get screwed with just green weapons and gear, and the game is noticeably harder, and your players get pissed off because they're getting screwed over by RNG, which already happens in battle royale games. Or the rarity system doesn't impact weapon stats enough to matter and is therefore completely fucking superfluous. And Back for Blood chose the superfluous route. So I'm interested in seeing which of those two is going to happen for Killing Floor because
Um,
there's not really a design benefit to implementing a system like that. It's just randomness for the sake of randomness.
I think I kind of did a bad job explaining the weapon rarity.
Mm-hmm.
It's not random. It's just that it's in trader time, right? The expensive, powerful weapons have like the purple stuff and whatnot. So it's basically just trying to tell you which weapons are very
Oh,
powerful to buy.
got you. So it's more like a okay. So it's more like a signal to the player of what's better than what at a glance, essentially.
Yeah, and I don't
Gotcha,
like
gotcha.
that because I think most players could just kind of tell if a gun is more expensive than the one they're using. Chances are it's going to be more powerful. There's even stats like when you purchase a gun, like showing you like how powerful it is. Like
And
it's
more than likely they'll have like art. If they're doing that, then they probably have like weapon archetypes. So like, because I think they're probably going for a system where like if you're already equipped with a rifle and you look in the shop and there's a rifle there and it's a higher color than the one you have, that it's objectively better and there doesn't need to be any stat reading. And that's probably what they're going for is just to try and make it just generally more accessible so that you can just at a glance go in and bam, 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 buy this and be out. That's my guess. That's my charitable interpretation of what they're doing that for.
and I said the attachments are colored as well.
Yeah.
You don't pick them up during gameplay. Like you can earn materials while playing, and at the end of the match, you can basically craft materials for your gun.
Hmm.
That'll add attachment. You know, you make your own attachments and whatnot. And you can even upgrade them to be more powerful, and that kind of increases the usefulness and like makes it a different color basically. So it's not like random RNG-ness or whatever. I just feel like they're just not being very inspired with their UI and just like chasing what's popular basically, and I do not like it.
I will say that like modern AAA UI is pretty much like that poisonous minimalist fucking look that
Oh,
just gets into everything. And not only that, it's not even well laid out or anything, so it's a chore to navigate. Halo Infinite really badly has that problem.
yeah. So does KF3. the
So does
the
what? Oh, KF3.
KF3. Yeah, the UI looks so basic. Um, Also we were talking about lighting earlier, how much like that kind of carries the graphics. The lighting in I know it's a beta, and to be fair, I've seen screenshots that look way better. So this could be a very early build they're using for their beta. But man, the lighting is so bad, it genuinely looks like a mobile game.
Well, just looking at the screenshots that they have in the Steam store, it really does look like that's. There's only a few There's only a few shots that they have taken here that seem to be effectively using lighting. It's mostly just like there's a problem in games generally where they're like afraid to use darkness
Yeah.
or dark shadows. They're like afraid to have that high contrast light effect. And I think that really is not a good idea because you end up with just everything looking almost like a lot of these screenshots here, everything in the shot looks almost the same brightness as everything else in the shot.
Yeah.
And you don't get a lot of high contrast, which I think is really, really nice for creating really beautiful environments. That's the reason why you can just install like a light and shadow shader to Minecraft, and Minecraft can look better than half the AAA games that are out there.
Yeah. Um, Reminds me of COD Zombies. Like when the zombies were outside the map and trying to
Mm,
get you through those barricades. Usually they would be like obscured in shadow, so you would see like this human silhouette with glowy eyes just like shambling towards you, and it just looked super creepy. And then when they got inside, they would be like more illuminated from all the lights and whatnot, and you could see like all their decayed features. Like that imagery just always stuck with me. How like they could use silhouettes to kind of display a sort of I guess unknown aspect to it, and then the monster gets revealed when it's like in the room with you. I
mhm.
just always thought that was very cool.
I like games that are that allow themselves to use pitch darkness as long as it's like appropriate for the game. Because there are some games where, like for instance, yeah, Far Cry, for instance, has stealth elements and stuff. So you would think like, well, that's perfect for playing with some kind of pitch blackness. But like the enemies are the AI is not very sophisticated, and it's meant to be a more accessible title. So having that kind of realistic lighting just doesn't quite fit there. Where it might be better in like in a Metal Gear Solid or a Ghost Recon or something like that. But I always like when games actually are willing to use just pitch, just real darkness. Where it's like if you don't have a light, you're not navigating shit.
Yeah.
Arma Reforger, well, technically both Arma games, but I've been playing Arma Reforger and screwing around in it, and that game gets dark.
You know what else gets dark?
Hmm.
Doom 3. And some people hate it for that.
Well,
uh,
I think people hated it more because you had to drop the gun to equip the flashlight.
yeah.
I think that was the big. I know the current whatever I can't remember, the BFG edition. I think they allow you to equip a weapon and have a flashlight on at the same time. But
Yeah.
I think that was the main reason everybody hated it.
And not just that, but a lot of the areas were like had more light sources or light sources were just made a lot brighter. So it just kind of made the like flashlight or light mechanic of the original kind of pointless.
Hmm.
There was even a part where you had to escort this scientist who was holding a lantern for you through this like dark hallway, and you would have to defend him from demons. But it's like, what's the point of that? I have like a little flashlight on me now. I don't need him.
Hmm.
I'll just let the demons eat his face. I don't care. He stole my lunch money. He deserves it. Um, we've been going for an hour now. Do you want to wrap things up?
Sure.
Hey, well, thank you for being a guest, B. I was really shocked that you said yes to joining. I really thought you would say no. Um, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitch at Bishonen BeeShonen. I spell it the same way everywhere that I use that name anyway. You can also find me on Twitter that way. Um, you can search Immortal Bee, The Immortal Bee on Bandcamp, and look for my album Tales I Lose. And then you can also find me on Coffee or Ko-Fi, however you pronounce it, at the same name. And I also take commissions there, so anybody that wants some artwork performed can find me there as well.
And do you have any wise words of wisdom to the audience to say right now?
Uh, You should cherish every single moment that you have with anybody that you love and everybody that you love, because you never know. Eventually, the last, eventually, you're going to have your last moments with whatever it is that you enjoy most. The the people that you're going to hear somebody whisper into your ear that they love you for the last time. Eventually, you're going to feel someone's arms around you for the last time. Eventually, so never get caught. Don't get caught up in the fear of losing everything. Everything will eventually be lost. Cherish everything that you have in the moment.
Those are some wise words indeed, B. Thank you for sharing them. And thank you for watching this or listening to this if you did. And see you next time.